All right, Dolphins fans, recording videos inside clearly hasn't been working for the Dolphins, so we decided to move it outside today. For our final preview and prediction video for Monday Night Football, Dolphins versus Titans, and then actually full transparency, it's the kids' nap time, so I've got to be quiet, which that means I get booted outside. But regardless, we're going to be doing our final Dolphins and Titans preview and prediction. We're going to dive into Tyler Huntley being the named starter for week 4. We're going to go over that final injury report. We'll talk top things that I've got my eye on. We'll finish with tackling the viewer submitted questions as well before giving our final score prediction at the very end. But I got to hear from you as well. First and foremost, if you haven't gotten subscribed yet, please do that. Would definitely appreciate that. Outside of that, though, in the comment section, let's hear your final score prediction. How do you see this one shaking out? Go ahead, drop your thoughts, drop your scores in the comments. But we talked about Tyler Huntley. I'm actually going to chat a little bit more about Huntley when discussing the top things that I'm going to be keeping my eye on for in Monday night. But I was told that right before being announced starter for this week, his final couple of days of practices, he was being aggressive. He was taking some shots downfield. He was actually showing some pretty good chemistry with Jaylen Waddle. Now, as we discussed in the first preview video earlier this week, Huntley is making the third starting quarterback in the first 4 weeks for the Miami Dolphins, which obviously isn't a great thing, but I think it's what most of us fans sort of wanted at this point in time, as it actually probably gives us the best chance of actually performing on offense, staying a little bit relevant, actually helping out the defense, which really hasn't played all that bad. We're just lowest NFL scoring team right now. We're not doing any favors for our defense. So hopefully these late week practices translate onto the field on Monday. Hopefully we get a receiver like Jaylen Waddle jump started. More importantly, though, hopefully Tyler Huntley can keep us relevant on offense, give us an opportunity to win these games while Tua Tagovailoa remains out. Let's dive into that injury report real quick. We got a few important things to go over because Terron Armstead and Kendall Fuller are out. They remain in concussion protocol, which means we are down 2 starters at 2 high-impact positions. Now, one of the viewer questions that was submitted talks about left tackle in the event Terron Armstead isn't going to play. So I'll hit on that here in a minute. But Kendall Fuller's replacement is going to be interesting because both Storm Duck, Saran Neal, they ended up getting in full practice sessions on Saturday. So they were taken off the injury report after being on it earlier this week. But I'm also curious to see, does Ethan Bonner make his season debut? Is he finally not a healthy scratch this week with Fuller out, with those other guys still at least probably a little bit dinged up? That'll be interesting to watch out for. I was also told that David Long would really love to give it a go against his former team. Obviously not getting the contract offer that he wanted from them a couple of off seasons ago. He would really like to kind of prove his point, stick it to him a little bit. Carrying a doubtful tag into the game obviously makes him a little bit of a long shot. Wrapping up the injury report for the Dolphins, though, both Raheem Mostert and Malik Washington carrying questionable tags into Monday. Now, I haven't heard anything specific on either of them, but it's at least a step forward compared to how they were getting put on the injury report the last couple of weeks. On the Titans side, we're going to talk in a little bit here about Jeffrey Simmons as well. You'll see on the scroll that he is doubtful for this one, but keep an eye on the game status of their cornerback, L'Jarius Sneed. He's entering this one with a questionable tag. Now, if you remember to that wild card, that cold playoff game in Kansas City against the Chiefs, it was L'Jarius Sneed that was getting physical with Tyreek Hill, which he didn't like, was really getting up in his face, kind of with Tyreek Hill. So keep an eye on that going into the game as well. But speaking of things we're going to have our eye on in this game, I've got my top 3 as always. And my number 1 is Mike McDaniel. Is our head coach finally willing to adapt? Because if you want to call it ego, if you want to call it stubbornness, whatever you want to call it, Mike McDaniel probably has a little bit of it. I don't think I'm breaking news there. Can he put the idea of him being the smartest man in the room with that current scheme that he has, that he believes in? Can he put that aside while Tua is out? Can he play a more basic brand of football? We've talked about this, but it's less pre-snap motion, getting the play in, just not as much razzle-dazzle going on before the play. More traditional running offense. Can he do that? Is he willing to do that? So far, it's been no. but now playing 3 quarterbacks, starting 3 quarterbacks in 4 weeks, the 4th quarterback we've played when you count Tim Boyle. Is he willing to do that? Man, I hope so. All right, next thing I'll keep my eye on. The cornerback opposite Jaylen Ramsey. We talked about DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans, and maybe they're not the world-class wide receivers that they were, or that we considered them at one point in time. They're still pretty good, though, by NFL standards. And someone not Jaylen Ramsey is going to have to cover one of these guys. Now, it's good that Storm Duck is off the injury report. Same about Saran Neal as well. But regardless of which option we go at cornerback right there, it's going to be a guy that has much less experience than a guy like Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. Finally, can we fluster Will Levis? We talked a little bit about this earlier in the week as well. The Titans are giving up 5 sacks per game. Will Levis has been sacked the 2nd most time of all NFL quarterbacks. This is the opportunity for our edge rushers to do their part, put a stamp on the season. And keep in mind, what does a better pass rush do? Makes it easier. We just talked about being a little bit depleted on the back end as well. Get those edge rushers going. Get Chop his first sack of the season. Maybe a multiple sack effort from Jalen Phillips. Strip sack would be nice. Maybe get a couple extra possessions. Let's see some stuff like that this week. Actually, I have one bonus thing before we hit on to the viewer questions. I was told to keep an eye on Julian Hill, cutting potentially a little bit more into Durham Smythe's snaps. That feels weird because Julian Hill has kind of also felt a little bit like a penalty machine. He's had a drop or 2 on the season as well. At least a strategy that they are discussing internally. We'll see if that one comes to fruition as well. Quick water break as we jump into the viewer questions. Excuse me. As always, thanks to everyone that submitted a question. I hope I get to all of them or most of them each and every week. But Zonka Wood Run comes in with, how does our offensive line stack up against their defensive line and linebackers? Thinking about the running game in between the tackles. Now, we talked about Jeffrey Simmons being doubtful. He is one of the better interior defensive linemen in the entire game. However, if he's doubtful, I never want to cheer for injuries, but that is a huge break for the Dolphins in the event he can't go. Their linebackers, Ernest Jones, Kenneth Murray, they're actually the team's top 2 leading tacklers on the season. But if you remember back to our first video this week, the Titans' statistical defense, the statistical weakness on defense is against the run. So if we can handle that interior defensive line, especially the guys that are going to be filling in for Jeffrey Simmons, remember they got Tavondre Sweat. We spent a decent amount of time talking about him this offseason as a draft prospect. But if we can handle those kind of guys, man, I think and hope that we can find some success. Put it this way, Jeffrey Simmons is significantly better at what he does than Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones is at what they do, right? Absolutely. But theoretically, the backups shouldn't be near as good as what they're doing compared to what our starters are. Now, I know that's not going to absolutely be the case, but it is at least should be somewhat of an advantage. We will see. With an extra day of practice, this one from Terrence Smith. Extra day of practice and prepare with Teron Armstead out. Shouldn't Patrick Paul get the start over Kendall Lamb? Now, prior to recording this, I did ask. I didn't get an answer yet specifically to that. So if and when that response comes in, I'll hit you up in the comments with the answer that I got. But quite honestly, yeah, I vote for more Patrick Paul. Now, when I did ask about this, granted, this was probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I was told that Kendall Lamb is still the primary backup. So at least as of then, that's what it's looking like. But at the same point in time, I would like to get Patrick Paul some snaps in these situations. Now, I know that with Kendall Lamb, maybe you're not going to go through the growing pains that you will potentially hear with Patrick Paul. But it's not like Kendall Lamb is this top-tier guy. He'd be out there. He's late in his career. He's already announced this is basically his final season. We're going to go through some lumps with Patrick Paul at some point in time. It's going to have to happen. Maybe we put it in there right now when we actually have a mobile quarterback that can do some escaping. So, yeah, I would like that to be Patrick Paul's job right now, especially Monday and then going forward, maybe however long Teron Armstead is out. But as of last I heard, it was Kendall Lamb. Like I said, I'll drop you a note in the comments when I when I hear back. Chris comes in with, how many times do the Dolphins need to run the ball against the Titans? I don't think it's a numbers game. I think it's not necessarily a number to me. It's starting early with the run, having success with the run, being consistent with the run, and sticking with the run. I went back our first 3 games. Against the Jags, we ran it 25 times. We won by 3. Against the Bills, we ran it 34 times. All the game, Tua got hurt. We were basically in shambles in the second half. We lost by 21. Against the Seahawks, we ran 18 times. We lose by 21. So right there, it's kind of telling you maybe it's not necessarily a numbers game, but like I said before this, it's not necessarily we have to run 30 times or we have to run 35 or we can't do it. It's about if we get down 10 points early like we did against Seattle, and Jaylen Wright had success super early in that game, you can't just give up on that. It's the NFL. You've got an opportunity to come back when it's that early in the game. Stick with it. Run that traditional offense. We'll see about Mostert, but give Wilson some carries in between the tackles. Spring Jaylen Wright in there as well. Throw Achane some passes. Don't ignore these running backs. It's not necessarily a numbers game for me. It's more of a commitment game for me. All right, John's got, if we go winless while Tua is out, would put us at 1-5 heading into week 8. That's when Tua is eligible to come back. Do we bring him back yet this season? 1-5? I'm going to say, yeah. I would say to get to the playoffs, you likely need to go 10-7, which makes you need to finish 9-2 over the last 11 weeks. That's your way to 10 wins. It doesn't seem as likely if you go ahead and look at the schedule. I mean, we've got at the Browns, at the Jets. We've got the Bills again later here this season. We've got the 49ers yet. The end of this season is tough. It's good teams, and we've got a couple of tricky away games as well where weather may be a factor. You've got to do it, though. I understand that rest is good for Tua, but Tua is getting that rest right now. We can't be scared to throw him out there, even if we were to go winless. I know playoffs at that point would be a bit of a long shot, but there's a no shot if we don't put Tua in at all. At some point in time, he's going to have to get back on the field, going to have to take a couple of hits. He's going to have to get over whatever mental hurdle there may come. Let's do it right now. You got him, bring him back. If you disagree, I'd like to hear some comments in the comment section about that as well. Let's go on to the final score prediction. Like I said, drop those in the comments. But Dolphins fans, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I've got faith. Like I said earlier this week, if there's a team that's struggling and going through it along with us, it's the Tennessee Titans. Now, the big things, we talked about Mike McDaniel. He needs to adapt. We need Tyler Huntley to perform consistently. We need him to protect the ball. But the thing that I think we truly need as well, we need our litter of playmakers, our litter of guys that just got contract extensions, step up, carry this load while Tua remains out. You can't have Raheem Mostert, Achane, Jaylen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and have an average 11 points per game. It's unacceptable. You can't, that from a player performance standpoint, unacceptable. From a coaching philosophy standpoint, unacceptable. You can't do that. And now going on to the defensive side of the ball, I know that they've done well, and I think they'll continue to do good, but it's basically, you got to feel that these games are on you. The edge rushers need to step up. The secondary needs to be locked down. You don't need to shut every opponent out, but man, we probably got to keep them in that 17 to 20 point range. So you do that defensively. Huntley protects the ball, makes some plays, stick to that running game, and actually have a foundation set on offense. We can do enough to beat the Tennessee Titans. I've said it before. There are ways to win in the NFL with a backup quarterbacks. Other teams are doing it right now on a weekly basis. We haven't been able to solve that Rubik's Cube. The time is now. It's at home. You've had a little bit of extra rest. You're playing on Monday night, and it's a team that's going through it right now in the Tennessee Titans. I don't want to, the cliche, if not now, when, but if not now, when. We'll wrap it there for today, Miami. Like I said, drop your thoughts in the comments. My plan right now is pretty much shortly after the game on Monday night, we'll be going live with our live stream recap as well. So like I said, get subscribed if you haven't done so already. Make sure you're joining us after the game for that as well. We will end it for there today, Miami Dolphins fans. Enjoy the game Monday night. And until then, fins up.